Good day, grade 12 learners. I am Nkomoti Ramuketi. I'm working at Khora Tutor. I'm the departmental head for Maths and Sciences, and I'm teaching grade 12 mathematical literacy. As you know that in term 2, our topic is on finance, about the interest. Remember, we as the grade 12, we are the one who are supposed to assist our parents on budgeting. So we must be able to assist them in the case where they want to borrow money from the banks, when they want to invest money for your future references, because next year you will be at tertiary level and you will be needing money to study further. Let's get in our topic. Our topic, according to our assessment teaching plan, is the interest. So the most important thing in mathematical literacy, we need to understand terminology. So we need to know what is the meaning of interest. Interest is the money someone pays for the use of money borrowed, yield and investment, or the price of a loan. There are three things to consider about interest. We need to look at the interest rate, which is the percentage charged or earned on the loan or the investment. The other thing is time, the length of the time the money is invested or borrowed for. Number 3, principal sum, how much was invested or borrowed. The other thing that we need to consider, we need to know the difference, because under interest we are having simple and compound, so we need to know the difference between the two. So when we look at simple interest, interest is calculated on the original principal sum only, whereas compound interest calculate the interest earned on the interest over time. Meaning on compound interest, each and every time, like for example, if it is a time of 3 years, then the interest that you got for the first year will be added to the next interest up until you are at year 3. We will see when we do the activities. So under the calculations, we have a question where we have Karabo, who invests 18,500 rand in a saving account that earns simple interest at the rate of 6% per annum for 5 years. So like we said, we need to consider the three things. The interest rate here is 6%, and the time, which is the period, is 5 years, and the principal sum is 18,500. Remember, Karabo wants to earn a certain amount of money on this money invested. So let's look how to calculate the interest at the end of 5 years. Because the question says, calculate Karabo's interest at the end of 5 years. So the simple interest will be 18,500 rand. We multiply it with the interest rate, which is 6%, and 6% is in percentage. Then as a fraction, we write it as 6/100, and we multiply by the period, which is 5. So when we take our calculators and we multiply 18,500 by 6/100 times 5, at the end of the day, we get a simple interest of 5,550. Meaning in 5 years' time, Karabo will be in the possession of an interest of 18,500. Remember, this is just the interest, because the question only asked about the interest. In number 2, the question says, calculate the value of the investment after 5 years. Meaning in here, we have to calculate how much money will Karabo get at the end of 5 years. Meaning it is the principal amount, which is the principal sum, plus the simple interest. The principal amount is still 18,500, and the amount generated after 5 years, which is an interest, is 5,550. And because we have to calculate the value, which is the total after 5 years, we add the 2, and the answer will be 24,050 rand. We move on to the second question. Calculate the total amount Mpho will pay if he borrowed 12,300 rand in a simple interest at a rate of 17.5% per annum for 18 months. Remember now in number 2, we are no longer talking about the years, and then we have a topic about conversion where we are converting. So in the conversions here, we need to convert our 18 months, which is the period. We have to convert it to the year. So to convert the month to the year, we have to divide 18 months by 12. So let's look at the calculations. So simple interest to be calculated here, we take the principal sum, which is 12,300. We multiply it by 17.5. Divided by 100, we multiply it by 18 over 12 because I said 18 months has to be converted to the years because the question says we must calculate the total amount according to the rate per annum. So the total amount accumulated, which is the interest, will be 3,228 rand and 75 cents, which means at the end of the day, Mpho will be having the principal sum, which is 12,300 plus the interest generated, which is 3,228 rand 75, and the total amount that Mpho will be having will be 15,528 rand and 75 cents. Question number 3, like we talked about the simple interest and the compound interest. This one is talking about the compound interest. So calculate the total amount Lindy will pay if he borrowed 120,000 at 9.25% per annum compound interest for 3 years. So in compound interest, we calculate interest per year. So in here, the interest will be calculated for 3 years. We start with the first year. In the first year, we take the principal sum, we multiply it by the rate, which is 9.25, and we divide it by 100. Then at the end, we get an interest of 11,100. And then what we do with 11,100, we add it to the principal sum of 120,000. So 120,000 plus 11,100, it gives a total of 131 rand and 100 rand. Meaning that by the end of the first year, Lindy will be having an amount of 131 rand and 100 rand. And then we move on to that second year because compound interest moves yearly. So in the second year, we took the amount which is accumulated after we added an interest. So the amount now is 131,100. We multiply it with the rate, which is 9.25. We divide by 100. And at the end, we get an interest of 12,126 rand and 75 cents. And we do the same thing like we did on the first year. We took 12,126 rand 75 cents. We add it to 131,100. So at the end of the day, when we add 131,100 plus 12,126 rand and 75 cents, we have 143,226 rand and 75 cents. And we move to the third year because the question says we must calculate the amount that Lindy will pay at the end of 3 years. So by the third year, we took the amount that we have in the second year. The amount that we have is 143,226 rand and 75 rand. We multiply it by the rate, which is 9.25, and we divide by 100. We accumulate an interest of 13,248 rand and 47 cents. And then the amount that we have, which is 13,248 rand and 47 cents, which is an interest for the third year, we add it to 143 rand, 226 rand and 75 cents. At the end of the day, we will be having 156,475 rand and 22 cents. Remember, grade 12s, we are now in 2020, which is 2021 year, and then in class we did rounding up and rounding down. So we want to find how much will Lindy pay, because we don't have the cents anymore, we do rounding down. So Lindy won't pay 22 cents at the end, Lindy will pay 20 cents. So the total amount that Lindy will pay by the end of 3 years will be 156,475 rand and 20 cents. Then after we understand the simple and the compound interest, and then we did also the difference between the two, and we did some terminology explaining the certain ways that you need to understand, because when you write your test, your exams, or your investigation, there is a question that says you need to explain or give the definition of certain terms. So after understanding the simple and the compound interest, there's another part which is a subtopic on finances, where we are working with graphs showing simple and compound change, because remember, in mathematical literacy we are having graphical representation. So there must be understanding of the graph, types of graphs that we are having, and then you must also be able to understand how to interpret that graph based on the information that we did about, because we talked about borrowing money and investing certain amount of money. So when we look at the first part, where we deal with the questions, we are having the question where we must be able to fill in the gaps in our graphs. So when we fill in the gaps in our graphs, we are having the question there where we talked about Fikile. So when we look here, we see that we are having Fikile, who needs to borrow 9,000 to pay for her university fees. She finds the following two loan offers that require her to pay the money back in 5 years' time. It has option 1 and option 2. So option 1 is on simple interest rate of 11% per annum. And then we have option 2, which is compound interest rate of 10% per annum. So when we look at these two, the difference is the rate. The first one is 11% per year, and the second one is 10% per year. The first one is simple interest, and the second one is compound interest. The other thing that you need to remember on simple interest, the interest remains the same from the beginning up to the end, depending on the period that is given. But with compound interest, the interest is changing over year, because the other one is added on the other one, meaning that it increases as time goes by. So we look at the question that we are asked. So we have the table, because in grade 12 also we need to understand how to complete the table, and we must also be able to read from the table. So the first question says on the table, we are having the year, we are having option 1 and option 2. So there are gaps on year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, as well as year 5. Meaning we must be able to calculate the amount accumulated during those number of years. So when we look at year 0, it is when the investment starts. Fikile needs to borrow 9,000. Because it is still the time whereby Fikile is borrowing money, Fikile doesn't have to pay anything, because the time has not yet passed, because the interest here is calculated per annum. So the first question says, fill in the missing values in the table to compare Fikile's two options. So when we look at number 1, At number 1, option number 1, it's simple interest rate of 11% per annum. So we must calculate simple interest. So according to this calculation, simple interest, we said we took the principal sum, which is 9,000, and we multiply it with the rate of simple interest, which is 11%. We can also say 0.11. We multiply it because we are at year number 1. We want to find for year number 1. So we can multiply by 1, or you can not just multiply by 1, because anything multiplied by 1 is the same thing. So we have 9,000, we multiply it by 11 over 100, or 0.11, and at the end of the day, we accumulate 900 rand. Meaning that during the first year, the amount of money accumulated will be 900 rand. As I have explained to you that with simple interest, the rate of interest remains the same. So during year number 1, we generated 900,000. That Fikile has to pay on top of 9,000. So Fikile now in year 1 have to pay 9,000 plus 900. So 9,000 plus 900 will give us 9,900. That is for option 1 in the first year. And then we move on to the next one, which is the second year. During the second year, we just have to add. So on the second year, we add 9,900 with 900 because we said the interest remains the same. So during the second year, 9,900 plus 900 rand will be giving us an amount of 10,908. And then we move to the third year. In the third year, we still do the same. We add 10,980 plus 900. When we add during the third year, we have 11,970. Remember, simple interest, you just add the interest from year 1 up to year number 5. Then we come to the fourth year. During the fourth year, we have 11,970. We add 900. When we add 900 to it, we accumulate an amount of 12,960. So now we go to year number 5, which is the last year. The last year we take 12,960. We add our interest, which remains the same or constant to it, and then we get 13,860. So when we go back and look according to our calculation, we will see that during the first year, the interest accumulated there is 900. Because what did we do? We took the principal amount that Fikile needs to borrow, which is 9,000. So once Fikile borrowed 9,000, at a rate of 11%, we multiply 9,000 by 11%, and we accumulate 900. Because we are calculating for the first year, we must add 900 to 9,000, and we get 9,900. And then now we come to year number 2. Year number 2, we took the accumulated amount in the first year, which is 9,900. Like I said, that the interest remains the same. We add 900. At the end of the second year, Fikile has to pay 10,908. And then we move on to the third year. We took the money accumulated on the second year, which is 10,980. We add 900 to it. And at the end of the third year, Fikile has to pay 11,970. And then we go to the fourth year. During the fourth year, Fikile was supposed to pay 11,970 on the third year. We took it, we go to the fourth year, we add 900 to it, and we get 12,960, which is the total, the money that Fikile must pay at the end of the fourth year. And finally, because Fikile is going to pay this money back, which is the loan, in 5 years' time. And then on the fifth year, Fikile is supposed to pay 12,960 plus 900, which is 13,860. So if you can look on our calculations, you will see that we are having 900 every time added so that we can be able to find how much Fikile has to pay on the loan at the end of 5 years. So Fikile borrowed 9,000. At the end of the fifth year, Fikile has to pay 13,860. So when we look on our table, we will see that we must be able to complete number one. So year number one on option number one, which is simple interest, will be 9,900. And then we move on to year number two. Year number two, we find that the answer will be 10,908. Year number three and number four is provided, and year number five is 13,660. And then now we move on to option number two. In option number two, we are given the amount, which is 9,000 that Fikile needs to loan. And then we look at the first year. When we look at the first year, we will see that we are going to calculate in a different way now. So when we look at the second year, at option number two, we see that it is now on compound interest. So we take 9,000. We are on the first year now. We take 9,000 rent. 9,000 rent, we multiply it by the rate, and the rate is 10%. So when we multiply 9,000 by 10%, at the end of the day, we accumulate 900. And then, because we are on the first year, we have 900 rent. And then this 900 rent, what do we do with it? We say 9,000 rent plus 900 rent, which will be 9,900 rent. During the first year, Fikile is supposed to pay 9,900 rent. Because simple and compound are not the same. With the compound interest, we move to the second year. During the second year, we take the amount that Fikile has to pay on the first year, which is 9,900. And 9,900, we multiply it again by 10%, and then we divide it by 100. When we multiply 9,900 by 10% and we divide it by 100, we accumulate, because we must be having our calculators in hand so that we can calculate what we have. So we have 9,900, we multiply by 10, we divide by 100, and then we accumulate an interest of 990. So 9,900 multiplied by 10% will be 9,990 rand. And then we take 990 rand, we add it to 9,900. So when we add 900 to 9,900, then we accumulate an amount of 10,890. And then we move to the third year. During the third year, we take 10,890, we multiply it by 10%. When we multiply it by 10%, we accumulate 1,089. 1,089, we add it with 10,890. So when we add when we add 10,890 with 1,089, we are going to have 11,979, because now we are in year number 3. And then we move on to year number 4. We do the same thing like we did, but the only thing that changes is the money now that Fikile has to pay. Now Fikile on year number 4 is 11,975. We multiply by 10 and we divide by 100. And then we accumulate an amount of 1,197 rand and 90 cents. And then, because we are in year number 4, we must be able to add this 1,000 to 1,197 rand and 90 to 11,979. So we have 11,979 plus 1,197 rand and 90. We are in year number 4. And then when we calculate, we see that we are going to pay 13,176 rand and 90 cents in year number 4. And then we go on to the 5th year. During the 5th year, we take 13,176 rand and 90. We multiply it by 10%, and then it accumulates 1,317 rand and 69 cents. And then we add it to 13,000. So 13,176 rand and 90 cents plus 1,317 rand and 69 cents, and then we accumulate 14,494 rand and 59 cents. So when we look at our table, in our table we have to complete year number 3, year number 4, and year number 5. According to our calculations, the interest accumulated in year number 3 is 1,089. And then during year number 3, we have 10,890. We add it with the interest accumulated, which is 1,089 rand, and we accumulate 11,979. And now we go to the 4th year. During the 4th year, we are having 11,979 accumulated on the 3rd year. We multiply it by 10% and we get 1,197 rand and 90, which is the 4th year. It is not completed there, we must complete it. And then by the end of the 4th year, we add 11,979 plus 1,197 rand 90, which is an interest accumulated during the 4th year, and we have 13,176 rand and 90 cents. And we move to the 5th year. During the 5th year, we took their money accumulated on the 5th year, which is 13,176 rand and 90. We multiply it by 10%, and we have an interest of 1,317 rand and 69 cents. At the end, we add 13,176 rand and 90 cents. We add it with the interest accumulated on the 5th year, which is 1,317 rand and 69 cents. And it accumulates 14,494 rand and 59 cents. Remember, this is the money that Fikile borrows. So Fikile is supposed to pay 14,494 rand and 59 cents. But because we are in 2021, we are talking about rounding. We don't have the cents anymore, meaning that Fikile is going to pay 14,494 rand and and 50 cents. 55 cents, because we don't have the cents and the 2 cents anymore. So by the end of 5 years in option 2, Fikile will be paying 14,494 rand and 55 cents. So when we look in the completion of our graph, we will see that we have to complete year number 1, year number 2, and year number 5 on simple interest. So the answers for option number 1 is 9,900 in year 1, year 2 is 10,980, and then year number 5 is 13,860. And then when we go to option number 2, we were to complete year number 3, year number 4, and year number 5. So when we look at the table, you will see that on the table there at option number 2, year number 3 will be 11,979 rand, and year number 4 will be 13,176 rand and 90 cents, and year number 5 will be 14,494 rand and 59 cents. But like I said, that we don't have the cents and the 1 cent and the 2 cents anymore. Fikile has to pay 14,494 rand and 55 cents. So we do rounding down. And then now we are having the next question. The next question that we are having here, the question says, what happens? We are at question Roman letter number 2 because we completed Roman letter number 1. What happens to the amount of interest each year in option 1? Remember when we were doing simple interest, I highlighted to you and indicated to you that the interest remains the same, meaning the interest does not change. Like in year number 1, the interest will be 900 up to year number 5. What we must do, we just add each and every year's interest to find how much Fikile has to pay. And then Roman letter number 2, what happens, number 3, what happens to the amount of interest each year in option number 2? We find that the interest is changing, is increasing over the period of 5 years. Meaning in year number 1, the interest is not the same as year number 2, number 3, as well as number 4 and number 5. So like we calculated, we have seen that during the first year, the interest was 9,900. And then we come to the second year. The second year, the interest was 990. And then the third year, the interest was 1,089. And the fourth year, the interest was 1,197 rand and 90. And the fifth year, the interest was 1,317 rand and 69 cents. Meaning that whenever Fikile borrows the money, each and every year, the money is growing by 10%, depending on how much Fikile borrowed. So like in this case, Fikile borrowed 9,000. So we are done with our table. Now we come to the graphical representation of the information above. Because now in mathematical literacy, like as I have indicated, we need to know how to represent information so that we can be able to read from the graph. So the most important thing in our graph, we are having the dependent and the independent variable. So we have year and 2 options. In our graph, I have labeled the other one A and the other one B. So based on our graph, we will see that we are having the time, which is indicated as 0 and 0,5, 1, 1,5, up to a period of 5 years. And then we look at the amount. Initially, Fikile is borrowing 9,000. So some learners will think that this 9,000 is at 0. No, it's not at 0. It shows that 9,000 is the money that Fikile loan or borrows from the bank for university fees, meaning that this 9,000 has not yet grown because the interest has not yet been calculated, because this money that Fikile borrows has to be paid after 5 years, and the interest is compounded per annum. So when we look here, we will see that our graph on the amount in rand, remember, the most important thing is the currency. Fikile is in South Africa because it's using the ZAR, which is the rand. So we have 9,000 and our graph moves gradually by 1,000. So from 9,000 we have 10,000, we have 11,000, we have 12,000, 13,000, 14,000 and 15,000. So because our graph has to be drawn from 0 up to 5 years, so both 2 points of our graph will start at 0, because during the year when Fikile borrows, we say is not yet grown. So we classify it as year 0. So the money remains the same. So our two graphs, which is graph A, which is option 1 and 2, on the graph paper here, I've indicated it as A and B because there are questions that ask about the options. So we will see that they are being drawn and they look different. They are not the same. So let's look at the questions. The question says, Fikile draws the following graphs to compare the two questions. So question number 1 says, which graph represents option number 1? So when we look at the question for B, for Roman letter number 1, we say the graph that represents option number 1 is graph B. Why? Because graph B is a straight line graph. The interest of graph B does not change. It remains the same, meaning that during year 1, year 2, up to year 5, the money is increasing by 900. So the question says, which graph represents option 1? So the graph that represents option 1, we say, is graph B. And then we move on to the second question. The second question says, which graph represents option 2? When we look at graph for option 2, according to our calculations, we said the interest is changing each and every year, meaning our graph will not be a straight line graph. It will change the shape. Like when we look at it there, it's not an acute straight line because the interest in year 1 is increasing from 1 year to the other. So the graph that represents option number 2 is graph number A. And the reason will be the interest changes from 1 year to another until we come to 5 years. Meaning that in graph A, the interest is increasing as the period or the time is also increasing. Based on the information in the table and the graph, which option do you think Fikile should choose? Because now Fikile is going to take the loan and borrowing money from the bank so that he can be able to pay her fees. So we will see that Fikile has to compare, because remember, in mathematical literacy, we need to compare which one is the best buy, which one is the cheapest option, which one is the option that is the lowest. So when we look at the two options, we see that Fikile will be able to choose option 1. And the reason will be Fikile will choose option 1 because Fikile is not going to pay more money like in option number 2. When we go back to our calculations, we will see that in option number 1, Fikile is supposed to pay the total amount of 13,860, which is the total amount to be paid. And the amount of money that Fikile borrowed is 9,000 rand. At the end, when we subtract the two, we will see that Fikile is supposed to pay an interest of 44,860 in 5 years' time. And when we look in option number 2, based on our calculations, Fikile is supposed to pay 14,494 rand and 59 cents. And then when we subtract 9,000 from it, Fikile is supposed to pay an interest of 5,494 rand and 59 cents. Like I said, we don't have the cents anymore. Fikile is supposed to pay 5,494 cents and 55 cents. We do rounding down. So when we look at the two, option number 1 is 4,860. Option number 2 is 5,494 rand and 55 cents. Then Fikile, to decide, will choose the cheapest option, which is option 1, because she is going to save money if he took the loan of paying an interest of 4,860. Vice versa, if the question was, Fikile invested 9,000, and there are two options that Fikile has to choose from, you will see that Fikile will take option 2 because now Fikile is going to benefit. The money is coming to her side. And then because now the money does not belong to Fikile, Fikile will prefer to pay the lowest amount, which is 4,860 rand under simple interest. So based on my presentation, because I have talked about the simple interest and the compound interest, we identify the difference by comparing what is the difference between the simple and the compound. And we also identify where we work with graphs showing simple and compound change. By now, I think you understood or you understand everything that I have explained to you. You have to remember the following. Simple interest, the interest is the same from the first year up to the 5th year if the question says in 5 years' time. And then compound interest, the interest is increasing from year 1 up to year number 5. Meaning in compound interest, the interest is not the same. So we did find the difference between the simple and the compound. We worked with the line graphs that indicate the simple and the compound, where the simple interest graph is straight line and then the compound is not a straight line. So we by now understand how to interpret the graph of a simple and a compound. I thank you.